Good morning, Year 5, and welcome to Tuesday's reading lesson. I hope you all had a good Monday and that you're excited to be doing your reading. We're going to be looking at find and copy today, so that is what our learning objective is. So you can get out your pens and paper and you can make sure that you are ready for this lesson. Those of you who have your Reading Eggs accounts, please make sure that you go into your Reading Eggs and you can now do your next few lessons in your Reading Eggs app. Right, so we're going to carry on reading our book Stig in the Dump, Stig of the Dump, and we are on page 29. So we're going to carry on reading. Again, you can follow with me, and you can make sure that you're reading out loud, or that you're just following along as I go. Right, so let's carry on. There were more jam jars than Barney had thought possible, and quite a lot of useful tins, the sort with lids. Barney looked at them. The dustbin man wouldn't say thank you for them, he thought. Why shouldn't Stig have them? He remembered a big wooden box which Grandfather had helped him fix wheels onto, so that he and Lou could use it as a cart. He searched round and found it among the firewood, but still with its 4 wheels more or less straight and the piece of rope on the front to pull it with. He loaded it with jam jars and tins and found it quite a weight when he set off across the paddock with it. He looked at Flash, the pony, as he struggled through a clump of long grass and called rather crossly, "You might come and help pull instead of standing there." But he knew that Flash took a lot of persuading to be caught for Lou to ride him, let alone for pulling carts. The pony just stood and watched, tossing his head now and then at the afternoon flies. By the time Barney had got his load to the edge of the pit, he was quite tired, but there was still the problem of getting them to the bottom. He sat on the camel's neck's tree trunk. The string was still there. It was the thick brown sort, and he thought it would be strong enough for a few jam jars. He called to Stig, and after a time Stig came out backwards, like a badger with its bedding, dragging a load of chalk. "I've got some things for you, Stig," Barney called. He pulled up the string and took the end to the pile of jam jars. About 8 of them were packed in a cardboard box. It would take too long to pass them down one by one, so he tied the string round the box, took it carefully along the tree trunk, and started to lower it. This wasn't nearly as easy as the carrots. The box swung wildly. The string round it started slipping. The part he was holding tried to run through his fingers and burned his hands. He took a turn round the stump of a branch and let it run out round that, hardly daring to look down and see what was happening. He hoped Stig wouldn't get a jam jar on his head. The box was hanging by one corner when it reached the ground, but instead of untying it, Stig disappeared into his den. "Hey, Stig, undo it," Barney called. "There's some more to come." Stig came out again, holding what was left of a large, broad-brimmed lady's straw hat, with ribbons to tie it under the chin. He untied the strings from the box and tied it to the ribbons. It made quite a useful-looking cargo sling. "Jolly good idea, Stig," Barney shouted. "Stig's got brains," he thought. After that, it was quite easy. He hauled up the hat, filled it with jam jars, lowered it down with the string running round the stump of branch, waited for Stig to unload, hauled it up again, and so on. When he had finished the jam jars, he started on the tins, which were much lighter, and when he had lowered all the tins, he looked at the truck. How strong is string, he wondered. Could he send the truck down the same way? If he didn't, he would have to trundle it all the way around the top and along the bottom of the pit. He wound the string a few times round the branch stump, leaving enough loose to reach the trunk on the cliff top, humped himself along the tree trunk, tied the string to a wheel of the truck, moved back along the trunk, and pulled the truck towards him by the string. The truck lurched over the edge of the cliff, swung wildly outwards on the string, which ran out so fast that he couldn't stop it, until a tangle in the string made it stop with a jerk. The string broke, and the truck was falling through the air. Barney held on for dear life to the tree. With his face against the mossy bark and shut his eyes, he felt weak and dizzy. At last he allowed himself to look down. He couldn't see the truck at first. Then he saw what it had swung out to land in the branches of an elder tree, and was hanging there quite happily. "I've set the track down," he called to Stig. "It may come in useful." He was still feeling what his grandmother used to call hot and cold all over, but he carefully inched himself off the tree and onto firm ground and set off round and down to the pit. A pity he couldn't let himself down on a rope, but no, he thought he wouldn't try just yet. His idea of sending the things down to the string had been a good one, though, he thought to himself as he walked through the course. Another day he'd have to find some more tins and jam jars to send down. He hoped Stig liked them. They would come in useful for well, things like that always came in useful if you kept them long enough. By the time he got to the den, Stig had untangled the track from the tree and was squatting, looking at it and at the tins and jam jars, and then Barney wondered what they were going to do with them. "These are jam jars, Stig," he explained. "Jam and marmalade come in them, and you can use them for keeping stuff in them, rice and coffee and things like that." But did Stig want to keep rice and coffee in his den? And these are tins. They're empty, of course, but you get all sorts of things in tins. Peaches and baked beans. You have to open them with an opener like this. He took out of his pocket a tin opener, which he usually carried about with him. It was the sort with a butterfly handle which you had to turn. Just to show, he fitted it onto the bottom of one of the empty tins and twisted the handle. The opener crept round the edge of the tin, the blade ploughed into the metal at the bottom, and soon the shiny round disc of metal came loose. Stig was fascinated. He looked at the flat round piece of tin which had been the bottom. He looked at the empty tube which was all that was left of the rest of it. And he took the tin opener from Barney and turned the handle, but he couldn't make it out. "It's quite easy, Stig, look." And Barney took another tin, fitted the opener on the bottom, and showed him how to work it. And there was another round plate and another tin tube, and Stig had to have a go, and they started on a third. One of the tins had been rather flattened, but it gave Barney an idea for how it might be used. He took it, left Stig with the others, and towed the truck into the den along to the place where Stig had been digging at the chalk. There was quite a lot of loose rubble lying around there, and Barney set to work to shovel it into the truck with the flattened tin. It was certainly better than using his hands, though it wasn't quite the right sort of shovel shape yet. He hammered at it with an unbroken flint stone and made it into quite a handy scoop, like the sort of village grocer used for shoveling sugar into little paper bags. Right. Okay, so we're going to have a quick recap of our find and copy skills that we need to use when we are looking at find and copy questions. So first step is that we need to read the question very, very carefully, okay? Remember, if they say find and copy one word, or if it's a group of words. Now, one word means only one word, and a group of words would mean either 3, maybe 4 words at most. So underlying and highlighting those keywords in our question is also very important. Now, today you obviously can't highlight or underline those key questions because you don't have them on paper, but hopefully you are making sure that you are taking a little mental note of what the keywords are. Okay, so a group of words will be a phrase or a clause, as I say, a couple of words. And remember, a complete sentence doesn't count as a group of words. Okay, you can also use antonyms and synonyms to help you decode some unfamiliar words. So looking at reading around the text as well and thinking about words that mean the opposite and words that mean similar to it, and seeing if you can try and figure out the meaning of the word. And as I said, use the context of the sentence. Okay, that last one is probably the most vital one for you to be using when you're trying to understand a word. Right, so if we have a look at these quick practice questions, it says find and copy a word which means frightened in the following paragraph. So when we find and copying, we need to make sure that we're also spelling that word exactly the same, okay? So we're going to read this little paragraph together, so I'd like you to read it with me. And then at the end, can you see if you can find a word that means the same as frightened? It says, edging slowly into the darkness, Ebony could feel her heart thumping in her chest. As she felt her way along the damp walls, invisible cobwebs brushed her face. Could she go on, Although she was daunted by the idea of continuing, she was determined to investigate further. Jake would never let her forget it if she gave in now. Okay, so it says there, it says that we need to know it's a word. So I know I need to look for one word, and that is a synonym, which means the same as frightened. And that must be a word that obviously then would describe how she is feeling. Okay, so you're feeling frightened, it's a feeling that you are feeling. Right, so can you have a go and see if you can find a word that means the same as frightened? And what I like to do is take that word frightened and put it back into the paragraph. So can you see if you can take the word frightened and see if you can find a word that you think is similar and that means frightened, and see if you can take that word frightened and put it in a place and then read back the sentence to make it seem if it can make sense. So you can pause the video and have a go at that very quickly. Right, let's see how you did. So it says, she is determined to investigate even though she is daunted. So daunted must be it. She's feeling very overwhelmed. She's feeling very frightened. So daunted must mean frightened. And there, if I take that word frightened and I put it into the sentence, even though she is frightened, that would make sense in the context of that sentence. Right, let's do another one together. So now we're looking for a group of words that tells us James is unhappy. Okay, now a group of words, we know that needs to be more than one word now. Okay, so I can't just write one word. I need to be making sure I'm writing a few words now. And when we're talking about being unhappy, we're talking about maybe a behavior of sorts. So maybe we're looking at how James is behaving. As James went through the departure gate at the airport, his head hung low. He wondered how long it would be before he saw his friends again. The decision for him to go and live with his dad in New York had been made for him. He had no choice. So can you now find a group of words that would tell me that James is unhappy? So pause the video now and have a go at that. See if you can figure out what are the groups of words that would tell me that he's unhappy. Right, it says his head hung low. Remember that is if we look at somebody who comes in and their head is hanging low and they're looking really sad, okay, that would suggest that they are very unhappy. All right, so we're just looking for those keywords, head hung low. We don't need to write the whole thing. All right, a group of words is 3 or 4 words at most. So just a couple of words. We're not going to write the whole sentence. That's a waste of your time as well. Right, so we're going to be doing our find and copy skill now, and we're going to be looking at the pages we've just read, and I've snipped them for you onto the slide so that you can see them. So I'm going to give you now, because we've done this skill before and we've just had a bit of a recap of it, I'm going to give you time now to go over the page and see if you can find and copy a word that has a similar meaning to convince. If I want to convince somebody to do something, what is another word? And I will highlight the keywords for you, seeing as you cannot doing it. So hopefully in your mind, you're thinking, yes, I need to make sure that I'm highlighting find and copy and the word, just the single word. And you might even want to highlight the actual word that you're trying to find the meaning to. So pause your video, have a go, see if you can find a word in the text here that means the same as you're trying to convince somebody, you're convincing them to do something. Right, hopefully you found the word to persuade, okay? It says Bonnie tried to persuade him, all right? So making sure that we're copying it word for word. And I want to see if you have figured out if I have made a silly mistake, because we often do this. And I've put this in here on purpose to see if you could see if I have made a silly mistake. And I would like you now to pause the video and just quickly write down what silly mistake has Miss Fink made that we often make. And so I've done it on purpose to see if you are making sure that you are focusing. So what silly mistake have I made? So if I go and read the text, I need to find and copy the exact word and spell it exactly the same. And have I spelled the word exactly the same? Okay. And no, I have not. If I read here, it says I needed a lot of persuading. I've just written persuade. And many of you often see a word and you either don't spell it correctly or you change it a little bit. Now, persuade and persuading mean the same thing, but have I copied it correctly? No, I have not. So we need to make sure that we are copying it exactly the same to make sure that we can get that mark, okay? Spelling will count, and so will making sure that we don't change the word, okay? Any other silly mistakes? I don't see, because I've just copied one word, which is correct, okay? I haven't added any additional words, but I have not copied it letter for letter, okay? So please make sure that when you do the rest of them today, you are making sure that you too are making sure that you're finding and copying exactly the same. So hopefully no silly mistakes like I have done. Right, let's go on to the question number 2. Right, find and copy a word that means to pick something up. So again, I will highlight these keywords for you. So we're wanting to find and copy a word again, and I want something that means to pick something up, okay? So you can pause your video now, have a go at seeing if you can find a word that means to pick something up. Great, let's see how you did. Right, so the word is haul, all right? And if I go and find it in here, he hauled it, and I think, right, again, Miss Fink has made another silly mistake, and she has not copied it down correctly. So we've got lots of silly mistakes that we can see that we make so easily. Even I've made another silly mistake. All right, so making sure that we're copying it down correctly. Okay, and hopefully you are seeing all of those. And I think there's another hold here again we read earlier. There we go. And to haul something up means to pick it up, okay? And if you want to go and check, if you want to see if that makes sense, you can go and put it back in there. He picked up the hat, okay? And you can also, there's another word, hold, okay? And he picked it up again. So there is how we can go and decode what the meanings of those words hold means by taking what they've given us and putting it back. Okay, so let's carry on. It says find and copy a group of words now that means grip something very tightly. If I wanted to grip something very tightly, what am I going to be doing? What is a group of words that if I want to, I don't want to let it go? See if you can find a group of words. So you can pause the video and have a go. Right, hopefully you had a read at the top there and it says Balny hold on for dear life. So there is my answer. He held on for dear life. Let's see if I've made any silly mistakes. Can you spot if I've made any silly mistakes? Right, let's go and check. Did I find and copy a group of words? Yes, I did. I'm happy with that. And does it mean to grip something very tightly? Again, I can go and put it back there. He gripped the tree very tightly. Yes, that makes sense. Have I now made any silly mistakes with copying it word for word? So let's check. Held, yes. On, yes. For, yes. Dear and life. And has it been spelled exactly the same? Yes, it has. So no silly mistakes there. Phew. I'm glad to see you guys are awake though, and you're making sure that you're doing the checking as well. Right, and our last question, it says find and copy a word that tells us Stig was interested in what Barney was doing. So again, I'd like you just to have a look there, see what those key words are now. What would you be highlighting or underlining, that you can make sure that you are finding and copying that exact answer. And you can pause the video now and have a go at finding and copying a word only. Great, it says there that Stig was fascinated. Okay, if I get my highlighter out, it says that he was fascinated. So let's check, have we made any silly mistakes? Has Miss Fink made any silly mistakes today? Let's check. Right, first of all, we're going to go and double check that I have. Did I find and copy a word? One word. Yes, I'm happy with that. And have I found something that tells me that Stig was interested. And that would tell me that if you're fascinated by something, you are definitely interested. Now let's check if I've made any silly mistakes with my spelling. Have I copied this word exactly the same? Okay, and I'm going to go and double check my spelling and double check my answer and making sure that I'm happy so that I can move on to the next question. Because these are nice, easy marks. And as we saw in our reading papers, many of you made silly errors because you didn't copy the words correctly or you slightly changed the word. Okay, so that's why we were just making sure today if there were any silly mistakes and making sure that when you are checking those answers. Right, and that is all from me for today. So I hope you've enjoyed your Find and Copy lesson. For the rest of the week, we're going to be looking at Find and Copy questions, and hopefully today you've learned some of those silly mistakes that we often see, and that you can make sure that you're checking that in your answers so that you do not lose out on those marks in your reading papers in future. So enjoy the rest of your day, and I will see you a bit later.